Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing Corner. Wow, episode 54 and counting. We're back at it. And today we're going to be talking about something some would say is impossible, which we're here to say maybe it's not, and maybe it is. Let's see. Either way, we're talking about KPIs for creative teams.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can set KPIs for their marketing teams, revenue, blah, blah, blah. But how do you do it when you have a creative team who's being creative all day? I'll kick it over to you first, Jen. You have a creative team. I just have an agency. Don't really do creative stuff, but you know. But so how do you do it at Onamundo?
Yeah. So I think great intro. Thank you, buddy.
You're welcome. I'm trying.
Thanks for that.
I'm trying to like do a layup here. It's like I don't feel like LeBron. I feel like the guy who's supporting LeBron. Nobody knows the name of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, LeBron, take it.
His
take
name
it away.
His name is Casper.
Cool. You're welcome.
So as Casper kind of mentioned, I have a creative team. I'm very lucky that I have a team of 11, and I have four.
Team of 11. That's
11
crazy.
people.
Wow.
Whoop, whoop.
Boom.
And 4 of them I would put in a creative bucket.
Yeah.
So I first of all have a creative manager who has a background in videography, but oversees the whole kind of creative process. That's Raphael.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
Shout out to Raph.
Shout out to Raph, who also helps us set this up so we don't look and sound like shit.
We love Raph. Yeah.
Then I have Alan, who's my lead designer.
Yeah.
And he has a background in obviously design, and so he creates ads, he creates banners, he creates kind of static stuff. He can do animations, and he also does web design. Then I have Maka, who's our social media specialist. So she's also a very creative soul.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, I have Michael, who is a full stack developer, just working on growth initiatives. And while he's not necessarily in the creative team, he creates the creative stuff. He makes it come alive on our website.
Yeah.
And so time and time again.
Do you have any copywriters?
We have 2 content producers.
Okay. Would you bucket them in creative?
No. So
Okay.
one of our content, unfortunately, he just left, but we have had an SEO specialist, and he was in the demand gen team.
Okay.
And then we have, so it's still kind of creative, but he does, focus on SEO optimization. So it is kind of a demand gen field. And then we have product marketing who work on lower funnel content, product specific.
Yeah.
So that's how we have it set up right now.
Because also, like, I always felt like copywriters, while it's more measurable than something like a designer or what Raph is doing. Let's use that example. But it's not as easy as someone who does Google Ads or something, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think if I can get some more headcount, wave a magic wand, I would definitely want like a copywriter to make things short, punchy.
Yeah.
And then they would probably be very well suited in the creative team.
Yeah.
But time and time again, we get that same question of what are the KPIs and how is the creative team being measured? And because we want to tie everything to revenue, and anyone who listens to this podcast, we rarely do push revenue, tying goals to revenue.
ARR, baby.
ARR, MRR, whatever RR you go for. Whatever your RR is, we got it. But when you have a creative team, it's very difficult for them to see themselves in MRR. So if you create a cool image that goes in an ad, you go, the ad did well. You don't necessarily point to the creative and go, the MRR is tied to you, buddy. Great job. They look at the targeting, they look at the budget, they look at the spend, they look at all the things that go into creating the ad, the click-through rates and things like that. But they never think, did this image catch an attention? And is this why people clicked, for example? And so we wanted to find a way that my team, especially the creative guys, could feel more tied to the MRR accomplishments of the team. So we're doing really well, we're over target, we're doing super well with the MRR, but it's not down to one individual. It's not down to the ads person or the Google ads person or the SEO person. It is a team effort. So how do you tie the performance of everyone into that MRR? That was the question, and that was the challenge. I don't know if this is something that you've come across in other jobs.
Oh, absolutely.
I do all the talking.
Like, no, it's cool. I love it. I feel like it's something when I was at Templify, we at least when I was there, we never solved it either, to be completely honest. And it was something I don't know, maybe I was just ignorant or something, but I never really thought about it until I think it was Erica, who's amazing, by the way, shout out to Erica, designer at Templify. She was like she said to me at some point, like, hey, Casper, I can't track if my stuff is good. Like, I don't know if my stuff is good. But so when you come back and tell me, hey, this ad performed really well, I'm like, yay! Finally, I can prove that my stuff is good, right? And I feel like, okay, but because I come from, like, I can prove almost anything I do, right? But this, so I've had that challenge before. I've solved it in, like, when it comes to copywriting content production, because I think a lot of especially copywriters, when you produce blogs and stuff, they don't always track that back to revenue. So I solved it. You can use tools for that, but also I remember I had a specific approach, just like tying revenue and how many page visitors, conversion rate, click-through rates do you need, and then how many blocks do you then need, and then we use that as a framework for saying, okay, this is the type and amount of content we need to produce from that perspective. But it's hard to solve when it comes to like video and images and all these like very creative like updating 3 websites or like 3 stuff like that. Honestly, I've never solved it for those.
And one of the things we used to do at Plan Day, where I think we got the closest to solving this, was we would do a lot of A/B testing.
Yeah.
So I would do the same audience, same copy, same budget, absolutely everything the same, but I would do a blue ad and a red ad.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like, okay, blue got the most engagements or click-throughs or whatever we're measuring, so let's do more blue ads. And that was kind of how the design team was part of that journey of helping me optimize, and I would meet with them every month and go, this worked, this didn't, give me more of this.
And I think that's different, like, and because I've done a bunch of, and for me that's just like, that's when you have a growth team or something similar, right? In a growth motion where you're like testing things and like, hey, this landing page is performing better than this, it's because we changed the creative. Well, now you have a metric that the creative improved. Yeah. So here it's easy, but when you do like, let's say you do a 3-month planning or you do a year planning, like how do you, like what's the KPI for this year? For the creative department. For me, that's the hard part. Yeah. Or harder at least.
It's harder.
Like, It's not impossible, but it's just like, it's not that easy.
No, and I, was trying to do some research because this was feedback from my team. They'd love some kind of KPIs. They'd love some kind of goals to go for. So this is not top down. This is, as a team, we wanted to figure out, one, what can we be pushing ourselves towards to avoid becoming like a service department of like taking in requests and just do the request out. How do we know those requests are worth our time? How do we focus? How do we prioritize? Like these are all the problems that we were kind of having. Yeah. And so I was doing a lot of research, literally Googling KPIs for creative teams, and everything that popped up was agencies. Yay. So like your good selves, but it was like customer satisfaction, billable hours. Yeah. That's not really an option when you have an in-house design team. I mean, and one of the ideas we kicked around was, do we do a little survey at the every completion of a creative that we say to customer support or sales, were you satisfied with what you got? But like, unless it's going to be a massive dick move, you're going to say yes. And then it's like a proper, it's really floaty, it's a fluffy metric, right? Yeah. So that wouldn't work. So it was a lot of sitting with my team and figuring out, okay, what are the things that you can control that help move the needle? And that's kind of where we came up with some, I'm calling them KPIs. Off air, you were like, are those KPIs? I'm like, ish. This is like right up there with the OKR-ish. It's KPI-ish. Okay. Because I think the problem, yes, KPIs usually should be tied directly to revenue. Yeah, right? Exactly. But for creative people, that's really hard to do, and you don't want to demotivate them. So I think maybe we have to rethink that a little bit for certain positions of how can you actually contribute to moving the needle towards revenue. Yeah. Even if you're not directly responsible for revenue. Yeah. So, for example, the blog example that you gave. Yeah. What is the incentive of the designer to make a shit hot blog design? Exactly. But at least in that case, that's relatively straightforward. Like at least for me, they would be like, okay, so you have a blog post currently that's sitting at like a conversion rate of 1%. Now you do some cool creative, so it increases the conversion rate from 1 to 2% or whatever, or something similar. There's something measurable. There's something you can measure there. Yeah. But there are cases sometimes where you're doing things where it's just, what are we really, how, like, you did 80% of the work, but we're measuring 20%. Yeah, like, exactly. Like, and then the 20% person puts the crown on their head and they're like, I'm a genius. And there's a path of people who got them there. It's like that Dream Data always do really good memes, but that meme of like the cheerleaders.
I
the
think
girls
it was
posing.
That did that one.
Yeah.
Cool.
The cheerleaders posing with the guy, and it's like sales, and then it's like the marketing
149 touch points.
Yeah. It's like that, but it's like great creatives, great design, optimized website, pushing up.
But I want to point out, like, it's kind of like you told me before we started here that like your paid manager Tice, shout out to Tice. There's a lot of shout outs in there.
There are a lot of shout outs.
But that he got a lot of credit for some of the stuff, right? And I was thinking like that's actually funny because like at Templify it's not like I got a lot of credit for some of the stuff, but I feel like the design team would actually got a lot of credit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And especially, I know this is like, we always talk about this like marketing and sales, like clinch, like alignment thing. Talk about copywriting and design. Like they're best pals, but design gets all the credit.
Really?
Yeah. Like all the companies I've ever worked for, design, whenever you update a PowerPoint template, people are like, this is the best thing that ever happened to this company. Yeah.
I'm the opposite, because everyone's like, I know it looks good. Like, I can't write the words, but I know that I don't like that color or I don't like that shape. And so I've actually found
there's a lot of opinions about design, but when
yeah.
something looks good in design, you can bet your ass everyone's like, yeah, this looks great. But then suddenly, like when you change your messaging or something, people are like, yeah, that's great, works, cool.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, fine.
I like the old one.
Yeah. Or you wrote like, hey, we wrote this 10-page ebook, and it's like, yeah, I really like the image on page 3. Like,
really?
come on.
Okay,
Yeah,
I have not
nobody
experienced that.
Okay.
Mine's been the opposite.
I think you've been in a bubble, Jen, because all the companies I've ever been at.
I've been in the upside down, because I'm still getting shit. I'm not protected from the shit. I'm just getting shit because people are like, I don't like that color purple.
Yeah, but they always have opinions.
They always
right?
have opinions.
Yeah, that's great.
Opinions are like assholes.
Yeah.
Everyone has one, but I don't need to see it. On that note. All right, so let me share with you some of the things that we've come up with as
awesome.
a team.
Please do that.
And don't at me that this isn't a KPI. Because it's the purpose of the...
You're trying. A for effort.
A for effort. The purpose of this is prioritization, focusing on moving the needle.
I'll promise to be gentle.
Be gentle. So we talked a little bit off air, but like my SOMI specialist, Maka, we have some pretty run-of-the-mill metrics.
Yeah.
Increasing of followers, launching content,
measurable,
things like that. Measurable.
Yeah.
But what she's also been tasked with now is repurposing existing content.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and that's one of the ones, how do you measure that?
You can't measure, you can measure if it's done.
Yeah.
But you can't say, and make sure it generates X amount. And I think that's unfair to put that pressure on someone, something that we haven't tried before, saying make sure it performs at this level.
Could you potentially split it up into categories and then say your allocation of things need to be in this order, and if you've done so, let's say I'm winging this, guys, but but you could potentially, let's say you have 4 different categories of what did you call it, creatives, or, yeah, right, 4 different categories of creatives, one for sales and one for operations, I don't know, something categorized somehow, and then you say, okay, at least 40% of the projects we deliver need to be perfectly suited for this. And then at the end of a quarter, you can go, okay, we delivered 10 projects. How much percentage of that did we deliver enough projects, and did we deliver enough percentage within the prioritization we had planned? Could you do something like that? Is that possible? We have
done something similar to that.
Okay,
so
cool.
One of the things, when I first joined, one of the big things we were doing was employer branding, right? We were hiring like crazy, so we were doing all these fun, cool videos. We're at the DHL. We're having cake today. Woo-woo! Yeah. And while that's fun, that was not driving business. And so I introduced, and a lot of requests are coming in like, I think it'd be really cool if we filmed this, and I think it'd be really cool. And it was like, okay, that's fun, but that's taking up team time. And so I brought in this kind of categories, like you said. So you had to do, I think it was like 40% of your time doing branding, 40% on lead gen, and then the last 20% was kind of ad hoc experiments and things like that. And that worked to an extent because I wanted to pull away from the employer branding. We were slowing down on hiring, and it was not generating revenue. Yeah. And
we have something similar. Yeah. Like we have a structure where like, hey, this is how we structure our company page posts and stuff like that. But it's just it's not something I report on.
Yeah, I put tags in Asana, so like when people were doing stuff, so that if a request came in, they're like, I really need to focus on lead gen right now. Like I'll put this in for next month or something. And again, it's the same idea of like prioritization, helping with focus. Because what tends to happen for creatives is you become a service department. Yeah, you get a ticket in and you just like process their ticket and then you go. You never see if it works. You never see how it performs. You're not really I'm sure designers are invested in it, but you're not measured on it. No. And I don't think it's fair that a designer is like, make sure that your design on that blog generates X amount of traffic. I think that's really tough to do. But I think what we're doing now is because we want to make our content more digestible. So we're very deep tech, heavy tech, really long articles of a lot of words. Turn that into a 1-minute video. And so the category for that is the content. So there's 3 pieces of content we want done every quarter. Yeah. On top of everything else. So it's whether it's a webinar, whether it's an animation, whatever you decide to turn this into to make it digestible on social. Yeah. That was kind of the brief for that. And then we also have a video series. So one of the things that we've been wanting to do is to get more talking to the developer community, because that's our bread and butter, but we don't really talk to them in fun ways. So it's launch a video series. We want a video series of 6 episodes by the end of the quarter. Okay. Yeah. The purpose of that is to start generating traffic from this particular group, but we don't know how much traffic to measure on yet. maybe in Q4, once we have that out of the way, we can say, and now we want to generate X amount.
And that's the thing about creative projects is typically you don't really have a benchmark, right?
Exactly. We have very little benchmarks. So that's what we're doing for SoMe.
Okay.
The thing I think is maybe I thought it was interesting, and then you made it seem less interesting. So now I'm not so sure, and I'm feeling really self-conscious about it. No, but for my web, my design, and my videographer, first we have completing 95% of all your projects by the deadline.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of their job anyway. I know.
That's what I said, by the way, guys.
Yeah, I understand that is kind of their job. But one of the other things that this forces is it forces everyone to put their requests in our project management software.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a
great
point.
We are completely plagued by Slack messages.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, can you do this? Hey, real quick, can you do that? And things get lost. So we also kind of use it as a way of forcing people to use our system so that the deadline is recorded and it's official. And then it's like, are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. Done. Everything is saved. So it has like a double meaning, but it also is a number. It's a number to achieve. 100%, of course, is ideal.
Yeah.
But shit happens. So we're saying things
and
like.
And then like the good part, like, and this is the part about like this part I really like is that having it in your CRM or project management. Like we used to do this in Monday when I was in United FinTech. I have Monday. That's also how we do it now. We're a small team, so that's not too big of a process yet.
Mm-hmm.
But is that you can go back and look on it. Like you can really if you even want to report on it, but you can go back and like, hey, this quarter we delivered all these things. And then you can group them and say, hey, did we do the things we wanted to do? Right?
Exactly.
Like,
and then we can still see like sales requests correctly, or things that come in, and we categorize those as kind of extra tasks to make sure. What I don't want at the end of the quarter is someone going, okay, so how did your team perform? And me going, like they did what they were asked, like the end. So at least we can say 95% of projects were all done on time.
I have an interesting idea. Sorry for inserting it into this. So
insert away.
So when I started the agency as Spark Force, we were very. Everyone told me, "Hey, you gotta track time tracking."
That's an agency thing, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "Fucking hate time tracking." Then I started doing it, and I still hated it. And then I'm like, "Nah, we're gonna do that. We're a bit bigger. Right now, we don't have to do that." So of course, I'm guessing you guys don't have time tracking. No. Would that ever be a thing you would introduce? Because it would introducing it would allow you to know what are the things you're spending time on with your team that takes up a lot of time that shouldn't be taking, and how scope your thing, because you don't do scoping, right? Like, do you do any hey, this project came in, it takes us about 5 hours.
Yeah, we're doing scoping with web. Web pages, web requests, we do scoping with that. But if someone wants a SoMe template, we don't estimate how long that's going to take. I think that's a really good idea, and that was some of the ideas we kicked around. We don't want to do that yet because we don't want people to be like, I've got to get this done. No, and that's my point. And I think that's kind of like what I'm getting at. It's just like that would, in a perfect, let's say I have infinite time, then time track infinite time and want to do time track, then that would be the not perfect, but it would be good solution. But the output, I don't think you're getting more, the final output from your team, your creative team, is not going to be bigger because you're time tracked. It's not going to be we solved, now because we're time tracking, let's say that takes the team at least 10 hours every week in total. Those 10 hours, are they worth it? Could those 10 hours be used differently? Because, the only reason you do time tracking is to increase your own performance somehow. I can see that.
Do you see my point?
Yeah, I can see the point. I guess the only thing that I would worry about is people saying, I'm not going to do that because it's going to take me too long.
Yeah, but that's my point. Yeah. That's why I won't do it. That's why I'm saying I don't think you should do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's even though it's a solution, right?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting task of how long do these kind of things usually take? So future planning.
Yeah.
I just would hate for it to turn into, no, I'm not going to do that because I only have 10 hours this week and I'm not going to do, And
I think the bigger point for me is we're taking something, we're trying to put a process down on top of something that doesn't really want a process.
Yeah. Just get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. It's get it done by the deadline. Make sure you do what you need to do to hit this. Make sure it's done on the deadline. Or when someone says, I need these 10 things all done at the same time, you can say, okay, I can only accomplish this, this, and this, because this is my KPI.
Yeah.
But if you give me an extra week, I can do this, and helping them manage their time.
And I think it's the same mindset of saying, when we do the podcast here, what's the result of the podcast for us? It's just we can see listeners from countries. That's it.
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it we can see, right? So
and if they knew how much time went into preparing these
episodes. The time effort is not worth it, guys. So my point with this is just we do sometimes things in marketing that we can't track the outcome of, but we still believe it's the right thing to do anyways. And tracking the outcome of it, even though we want to track it as much as we can, is not worth the effort.
Yes, I agree. I think it's an interesting play on time in sort of understanding how long tasks take.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same when you're trying to attribute down to the
like the
pixel.
last percentage point. Don't get me wrong, I fight for attribution percentage points all the time, but is it worth it?
Yeah.
Like,
I think this is a different episode.
I think this is a different episode.
Because it's definitely like I'm meeting with teams all the time now to get the attribution right when I could do other stuff, right? But back to the KPIs.
Yes,
timing is an interesting one. No, that's absolutely fine. Because we're almost out of time, and I have two more that I think might be interesting. One, in terms of creating web pages.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people do is maybe they're like, hey, we kind of want this, or we want this new design, or when we did our rebrand, we kind of, as and when we go through and we just kind of update the pages. But we put in a KPI that we need 3 high priority pages designed every quarter.
Okay.
In time for the web developer to code them. So they have a joint KPI together.
Okay.
And I know, again, people are going to say, isn't that their job anyway? But this is forcing our team to prioritize what is going to have a high impact. So we do an ICE score now on the different pages that we want.
Ooh, there we go.
What is the high impact, low ease, get those done, and then kind of mapping out what they're going to work on instead of doing the as and when. Okay, I'll work on this page when I have time.
But that's a good framework for generally like mapping these things, right?
Yeah.
Or like for saying, okay, because then coming back to the whole point is saying, okay, then your KPI is not to do 3 landing pages in a quarter. Your KPI is to do this amount of high impact stuff.
Exactly.
And you can actually associate with that point. So like you need to do 100 points worth of high impact stuff.
Yeah. But we're not giving the designer.
But then you give a lot of freedom to the designer.
Yeah, the designer can build it, but it ties into our demand gen team. So the demand gen team have the generate SQLs, meetings booked, traffic. They have that, so their requests are now being taken into consideration by design. So when the demand gen team hits that target thanks to this page, that designer and the full stack developer can tie themselves to that accomplishment. Yeah. And that's the point, right?
That's the whole point.
Of tying them together so that demand gen manager turns around and says, I could not have done this without you. So Tice would do that anyway because he's a really good guy. But I'm saying in most companies, you can turn around and say, this high priority project accomplished this.
But I think that solves a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
Like by having some sort of point or some sort of system for... And also for evaluating, because this is the whole idea behind growth teams and growth hacking and all. We're not going to go into that, but that's the whole idea behind that, right? Yeah. And then it allows you to tie it into some. I love that. That's really good.
And it's tying it in, and I think it gives the creative team the control. Instead of demand gen saying, I want this, this, and this, and they kind of do it as and when, it's like, no, it's also your job now, because it's your KPI, to go to them and say, I want to do this, or, so you have the impetus now to be proactive and say, I have to do these 3 things. What do you want? Let's get this done. As opposed to sitting back waiting to be told, do this. And the last but not least is for our full stack developer, Michael, who's about to become a dad any minute now. Congrats, Michael.
Congrats, Michael.
Maintaining a website loading speed of 85% satisfaction.
Okay.
So in our tool, we use Uptime. You can see the satisfaction. So the satisfaction is how long does it take to load for certain places? Yeah. Now, again, that sounds like, isn't that their job? But that feeds into when I'm designing this page and you give me this image, I'm going to go, make that image load faster. So it kind of, again, it puts people more in the driver's seat.
But that's, again, measurable, right?
This is measurable, but yeah, before we would love to have, we have 99% uptime. Of course, that's important. Everyone has that. But making sure that the website loads and making sure before it's a problem, being proactive and saying, is this going to load? Let me test it.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And maybe most developers do that, but this was something he specifically requested, saying, I want to make sure that this is put down so that when I go to someone and say, I can't use this image because it's going to hurt my KPI. Again, it's that motivator. It helps that focus.
Okay.
And it helps everyone kind of buy into what we need to do as a team. Because you can give me the world's most beautiful animation, but if it's going to slow my website down,
not happening.
Then it's not. Yeah, there's no point. So it's kind of tying all the team to working together.
I like that.
So we're going to try this for a quarter, and then hopefully this, for creatives, maybe it'll help establish a baseline. And then for Q4, then we have a baseline to start with. So
Yeah, and super motivating.
yeah,
Generally,
I think they seem excited.
Yeah.
I'm their boss, so they have to pretend they're excited. But
they seem excited with whatever you tell them.
to
almost.
my face.
Yeah.
No.
And then behind the scene, they're like, "Fuck this
I
shit.
hate
I hate
this shit.
KPIs
Oh
for creatives."
God, can't I just draw emojis?
Jen just wants something to talk about on the pod.
Yeah, she needed something to talk about. Quick, look busy. So that's my spiel of KPIs for creatives.
I think it's great. I think it's really interesting. It is something. I think you're getting closer to solving it. I think you said before we went live here, and so it's probably impossible to solve completely ever, but I think what you're doing here is a quite good attempt.
It's a step forward.
Yeah.
So moral of the story: meet with your creative team.
Yeah.
Ask them what kind of things would help keep them on track and push them to be aligned with company goals and to be more interactive and proactive with how they can achieve things.
Yeah.
A lot of design teams, with all the best will in the world, they're so used to being asked what to do.
Yeah.
These kind of KPIs help them go forward and say, this is what I think we should do.
Yeah, and score your ideas so you can actually evaluate if it's worth spending your time on.
Yeah,
it.
that's another good point. So we'll look into how long things take
Yeah,
to be more realistic about projections.
Exactly.
Cool. Anything else?
No, I think it's good. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.